what is going on YouTube? This is Acid Roots. So I'm going to review the fourth album by rapper Ice Cube. Basically this product is called Lethal Injection and it came out in the late fall of 1993. So basically at this particular stage, Ice Cube had dropped an album every year between like 1990 and 1993. He had some hit albums like Death Certificate and The Predator and some of those types of ones. I don't remember every last one is full blown. I at least reviewed The Predator way back in 2021, so I wanted to get to some more like the 90s Ice Cube albums to see the pitch behind some of these. But this is basically a classic. This has to be one of Ice Cube's best out of the 90s gangster rap days. It kind of gets some flack in certain times, I would have to say, which is kind of an unfortunate aspect just because I look after there's a lot of quality about it on here, seemingly that it just kind of felt like Ice Cube was just better on like his political type raps like Death Certificate and some of those type ones from 1990 91. Now critics would give like his 1990, his 1991 albums like 5 stars and probably like The Predator like a 4-star and this one like a 3-star or something like that. But I definitely think the amalgamation of this particular product is pretty excellent just because I look after this was an album that embraced like Dr. Dre's G-Funk type sound around that particular time, where the prior ones were kind of more golden age of hip-hop, more boom bap-esque, not so much full-blown boom bap, but just kind of more stark and differential type productions. But the amalgamation of what Dr. Dre, NWA, things like that, the West Coast were kind of doing with like productions between like about the summer 91-4 when Niggas for Life by NWA kind of came out. It was a good pitch that it helped sonically make a lot more albums throughout like the 90s for kind of more pleasing to kind of have. But look after this is an underappreciated album here. It had some Ice Cube's best singles, definitely one of his career highlights, and You Know How We Do It, Really Doe is a real nice one as well. That's an underappreciated one. And if Bop Gun was a lot shorter, it'd probably be one of his best as well. I think at least the radio edit's pretty good, but it's just kind of the concept behind it. So this is a pretty glazed type product. This is hella good to smoke to. This is the concept of this. If you want something that's like Bob Marley-esque from like the 90s, this is not a reggaeton album, but definitely within the aspect. There are plenty of good smoking gems on here. This is definitely some 40-ounce type music, sip like an Old English, some malt liquor, some of that type of stuff. Just real good. This type fare, just having khakis, some of that typeness, just be able to get this Jerry curl type music, some of that type tone, just within the aspects, some zigzag, some of that type fare, the sort of stuff the Afro Man would be talking about on like his early 2000s records, pitches like that. Ice Cube was obviously about that movement back in the early 90s, and he was one of the ones that was at the forefront of this. I just had to say this was an underappreciated album here, and it's just kind of the concept that it probably could use. I kind of feel like The Predator and this particular album just get more flack compared to some of those type ones, but I think despite the fact that he wasn't talking about like the state of like the Los Angeles riots and some of those other things, not as politically centered on this particular product, but you look after, Ice Cube did have stuff to say on here. There are some ones like when you look after like When I Get to Heaven, and when you look after Bop Gun, and you look after Ghetto Bird, some of those type of ones, he did kind of have like some fare as far as knowing what's kind of going on in the world, as far as what's particularly kind of happening, just within the aspect behind it. So this is kind of the tone of just kind of saying it's just more gangster rap oriented. It's just not as much of like, you know, Tupac on like his vibes from like Tupacalypse Now and strictly for my niggas, I'd have to say. But I'm not mad at Ice Cube for being more indulgent on this particular product. It's really not a problem whatsoever. It's just an excellent type concept to be able to get a lot of this just within the pitch behind it. This is a fielded type album here. This one more so than like his earlier ones. Like I do feel like The Predator was good, but it didn't have like the sheer amount of bops on there. I mean, I definitely like the DJ Muggs production, some of those type ones, but apart from like Check Yourself and then like the song that It Was a Good Day, it just didn't have as many social kind of bops for like some good like downtime and just get crunk typeness, especially in the early 90s. But I think this album particularly does it a lot better. It has plenty of good turn up type joints and some of that type fare. For 1993, this is the most jarring and just overall frenetic type project in terms of festivities. It's just a good concept. When you look at a song like Ghetto, like a real highlight, another career highlight for Ice Cube, I'd say at least out of the first half of his career from like the early 90s would probably be Ghetto Bird. This is a real excellent type one. Didn't realize about this song, but this is a real carnivorous type one. So there's just some ones like that. But yeah, we'll go ahead and talk about the singles here. So I recommend all 3 of the singles, and basically out of 11 songs on this particular album, it's really only 2 songs I don't recommend. So I just would say those 2 songs would just be Lil Ass Gee and then Enemy. But we'll get to those. So basically Really Doe is just like a murky and kind of jazzy bar hop feeling good type commute to kind of get here. There's definitely like some riled up kind of G-Funk, and it's like a darker version of Check Yourself, I'd say. So it's a good concept, kind of get some of that type of feel. If you do like the relative jazzy typeness of like Check Yourself, just with like a darker mean streak and just overall more gloss towards it, and like a more just like just like a more gloss towards it and just a more shrouded type sense is a good aspect just to be able to have it. It just feels like you have like 3 or 4 beers in your system, you're just feeling good, eyes might be red a little bit, obviously not driving around, but just within the concept, obviously not driving around pitches like that, but just within the concept of just having some local kind of turn up and just being able to have some good buzz and just kind of be about it. Just look after just within the concept of being able to just appreciate like some good pitches of just getting some turn up within the sense. So these just have like, this album just has like a very murky sense about it. I just look after the tone behind a lot of this, minus like the song You Know How We Do It, which is kind of like, I feel like that's a classic G-Funk type song, but I look after a lot of these particular songs, like when you think of like Really Dough, Ghetto Bird, Down for Whatever, some of these type ones, Cave Bitch, a lot of these just have a pretty murky just type nest. It kind of reminds me of like a combination of like Brother Lynch Hung and like some of those type of folks. Can't really think it's many full blown, maybe X-Rated, some of those type of ones, just with like the concept of kind of like this. It's just a more kind of alternative to Dr. Dre, where Dr. Dre was definitely like vanilla rap out of the West Coast in like the early 90s. Him and Snoop Dogg were definitely vanilla rap. I feel like Ice Cube was like alternative rap within a sense. This one's not as rock bound, didn't have like this one doesn't have like a rock centric type song like Wicked or some of those type ones, but it definitely is a pretty murky type project to feel it gets. I do like the concept of this Ice Cube kind of being like, kind of like he transcended, like he definitely was a household name between being in movies like Boys in the Hood and some of those type of ones, but just the concept that Ice Cube was kind of doing what Bob Marley kind of did, where he was just popular like universally more so than just hardcore rap, and it's just kind of concept that the way he did it compared to Dr. Dre got there just because he was like the forefront of rap, but Ice Cube did it just because he was making like these ones that were just kind of more connecting on like a casual level. This is a pretty casually affable type project here, just to be able to get that, so it's a good concept. It really does a nice one, underappreciated song. I definitely have to say, good one that knocks pretty well, just a real nice one to have Red Eyes to, and just have some 40 ounces drink in your system pitches like that. You know How We Do is the second single, is the real glitzing type one. It's like a super glazed and perfect kind of mellow cruise around, I would definitely have to say. Definite one to smoke a nice one too and sip some 40s too, as far as those pitches kind of happen. This song should just remind you of California out of like the early 90s. I'd have to say this is like a very signature one. This just screams Los Angeles, Compton, some of those type of places, Inglewood, some of those type of places out of the early 90s, 1993, 1994. Between this album and Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style, this is just some of the ones that just had West Coast just booming, just pitches like that, just the constant concept of just having some of those highlights. But yeah, I mean, obviously this was the biggest song off this particular album. I think Bop Gun did decently. Really Dope kind of did somewhat good. But look after it, this just happened to be a real West Coast staple and just an overall good look for rap music throughout the first half of the 90s. Bop Gun One Nation is the third single, and this is one I used to not like this song as much back in the day. I look after it. The main reason why is just because it's an 11-minute song, and I really feel like I don't know why it was. I can't figure out. This is kind of like this has George Clinton on there, and this is kind of like a Parliament type song. Snoop Dogg is known for messing with Parliament and some of that funkadelic type stuff. I don't know as full blown much about that, but it's interesting type pitch because this is like the most psychedelic song on here. This is the most trippy type one. It's a real nice one to kind of get, but I probably would just shorten the song. You purchase this album, I would just probably shorten it to like the radio edit, which is like 3 minutes 45 seconds, I'd have to say. But look after it. Bop Gun is basically like a nice Parliament-like pep to kind of get here. Very trippy kind of summer trek and festive outing to kind of get some of that, this kind of more Woodstock type stuff, some of that type of era. I'm not sure if Woodstock would still be around in today's times, but just the concept of some of those type ones. Festivals like Woodstock, some of those type of things. Summer festivals where there's going to be smoking everywhere, pitches like that, just hot weather type stuff, and it's like a great song to smoke like a Marley too. So it's just a concept. This definitely reminds me of something Snoop Dogg would have done. I think Ice Cube did it a little bit before Snoop Dogg kind of did within the pitch of just having that within the relative type sense, but Snoop Dogg did do some of these, and Ice Cube's pretty good at doing some of these type ones as well. This real psychedelic type one, just to kick back and really kind of just unwind a bit, and just really, this would be one where you just would be tripping real good. Another Red Eyes type song just within the summer bounce. This is kind of one that reminds me of something that Sugar Ray would do with like the song Fly with like Super Cat on there. I'd have to say just a little bit more kind of glazed about it, just a good pitch. Not quite as radio pop friendly, but still good concept. Relative bop towards it, but more alternative than like standard vanilla radio. Some nice alternative sheens about it. But yeah, so basically, like I was saying, I recommend every song on here out of the 11 songs. The Shot, the intro, I'm not going to talk about, but basically the only 2 songs I don't recommend would just be Lil Ass Gee and then Enemy. So basically, Enemy was just kind of an outgoing type one that just didn't really have much fielded kind of atmosphere about it. I just look after it was kind of one for on the go, but I just feel like songs like You Know How We Do It just nail it better. And I'd probably say like another song is another one that's kind of out and about, like Make It Rough, Make It Smooth. It's just another nice one that just nails some of those vibes of just being on the go a little better. This just feels like Enemy just kind of feels like Aaron's music, but it just is kind of dismantled to the point where it's just not as enjoyable. It's kind of an awkward type song. And Lil Asky was another gangster rap type one that just didn't nail it as well as like Ghetto Bird and like Really Doe and some of those type of ones. Just felt like this was I like the concept of having some of that West Coast highlights as far as being like the pitch and the apex of gangster rap music and G-Funk as far as those pitches gonna happen, but it just kind of felt a little bit more rickety and just not quite as like mantled as what it probably needed to be. It just was not. It was just a little bit more riled up, but not necessarily in like a glossy kind of execution-wise good kind of way as far as those pitches gonna happen. It's just not as fitting of one. That's the only real two duds on this particular product. So this album's going to get a 10 out of 10. Just a real aspect behind it. I remember I gave the Predator a lower score. I'd probably give the Predator a higher score nowadays. I think it probably has more gems on there, but this is the better produced type album. I definitely think, obviously, I would say the Predator probably had more, like, I don't want to say full-blown better singles, but it just had the aspect of just like having ones that just did a lot more damage. But I look after it, it probably had less joints for Trump. There are plenty of songs on here just for some of that, so I'm going to get to some of these. So yeah, one of the best songs on this particular album, this is another career highlight for Ice Cube apart from You Know How We Do It, would probably be Ghetto Bird. This is like a classic kind of West Coast synth house party turn up to kind of get here. This definitely should have been a single, I'd have to say, and it's like a gangsta party kind of hitter to kind of get. It's just one of those type ones. You look after some of those type pitches, just real good concept for having like standard house party type smash, some of that type fare. Everyone's showing up, pitches like that, hell cars and like the street as far as those pitches kind of happen, just without the cherry tops kind of being around as far as pitches like that kind of happen. Just a classic house party type gem to kind of get here just within the aspect behind it. Good song to have hella smokage to if you really want some West Coast flavor to some of these type ones, especially if you miss out of the vibes like the 90s days of Ice Cube and Too Short and Tupac and Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg. Some of those type of folks is a real highlighted one. And I'd say this is one of the most immediate ones. When you think of obvious songs like Let Me Ride by Dr. Dre, Nothing But a G Thing by Dr. Dre, California Love by Tupac, Gin and Juice by Snoop Dogg, this would definitely be one of those that should probably be in that list of just like a West Coast party would be Ghetto Bird. That and You Know How We Do It would be some ones. But interesting thing is that the producer of these two songs was QD3, which is a cat that produced for Tupac as well. Good concept for that. But Down for Whatever is another highlighted one. This was in the Office Space soundtrack, or was it even in the Office Space movie? It's interesting in the Office Space. That's a real cult classic of a movie. That's a real excellent type one. Had some good songs on there. Just the soundtrack, the songs that they put in that movie, between like the Scarface song and some other songs like that, it's just a good choice. They had a real poignant pitch for picking some great songs that just gave like some songs that probably wouldn't have had that popularity. In some sense, is just more distinction. I'd say those good concepts. There need to be more movies that do that sort of thing. But Down for Whatever is like a synthy kind of highlight. I would definitely feel like very similar to Ghetto Bird and some of those type of ones. It's like a pseudo horror like feel about this one. Good song to get hella torch to and just housebound ruminate just kind of get here. So there are some rumination type ones, just the concept, food for thought type fare, just Bill Payne, just pitches like that, just standard fare, just like thoughts to kind of have, not so much paranoia of smoking, but just the concept of just extra thoughts of just standard day to day as far as those pitches kind of happen, just within the aspect behind a good tone. So yeah, I would definitely say that Down for Whatever is just another classic highlight off this product. Probably once again one of the album's best, I'd say, along with Ghetto Bird and You Know How We Do It. Just another probably top three, probably top four, top five of the best songs on here. I'd say just within the pitch, just real kinetic type one. I would say Make It Rough, Make It Smooth is a highlighted one as well. This has KD on there. I'm not sure who that particular cat is, but it's the only real guest on here apart from George Clinton, I'd have to say. So this is basically like murky, kind of typical Glazed Day fun to kind of get here. Some good Malays, kind of homies music, I would definitely feel like, and this is just like a good song for some slow cruises. There are some homies type songs kind of get on here. I feel like Down for Whatever is a nice one for that. Ghetto Bird, obviously. Make It Rough, Make It Smooth. It's just a nice one just kind of for some kind of relative lackadaisical kind of day, just a glazed kind of day, just typical kind of fare, just getting some errands done, just the concept of leaving the house, figuring out what to do, just almost makeshift, but not quite. Just kind of, I don't want to say hustler's makeshift either, but just kind of the in between of just like standard moments that are just not at work, but then also just not necessarily like turn up, I'd say, but it is feel good. I would definitely say you could have some liquor in the car, some pitches like that. Just a good concept, just picking up supplies and just in between and getting stuff done, getting tasks taken care of as far as those pitches gonna happen. When I Get to Heaven's a pretty quality one. It's a nice gem to kind of get. This is like a Tupac like pondering of a song to kind of get here. It's an excellent tip to kind of get Ice Cube on some of that type topic fare as far as those pitches kind of happen. It's like classic gangster rap kind of rumination, I'd have to say. It's like some gusty commute, and this song is very much in the clouds, I'd have to say. So it's just a good pitch behind it. But I do like the tone behind this. I do like these sorts of songs from Ice Cube as far as that would particularly kind of happen. It's a good extra tone to kind of get some of these. This really feels like something Tupac would do, like Wonder If Heaven Got a, with Tupac when he would do some songs like Wonder If Heaven Got a Ghetto or some of those type ones, or Heaven Ain't Hard to Find, some of those type pitches. It's a good concept for some of that. A real nice one to kind of just be stoned a little bit and just kind of have some afterthoughts just within the tone. Nice thumping one to kind of get here is Cave Bitch. It's like a thumping, kind of nice groove, man cave and hangout kind of creeper to kind of have just within the aspect behind it. And this like a suburban song would be like a suburban version of like Ghetto Bird, I'd say. So it's just a little bit more. Ghetto Bird is definitely more California bound pitches like that. But if you do live in like the Midwest or like more places like Kansas or Colorado, some of those type of places, Tennessee, some of these type of places, just more, not so much just throwing up the West Coast pitches like that. I'd have to say it's just a good concept, kind of get some of that just within the fare of having like some extra kind of just thump for like man cave type music. This is a real alternative type one. This is one of those ones where I feel like probably metal fans, rock fans like get folks like the Korn Ice Cube cover that they did with the song Wicked, some of those type pitches. This would be one of those type songs that probably folks that like Ice Cube from like when he does stuff with rock bands and pitches like that, this would probably be one of those type ones. It's real kind of alternative type one to kind of get a nice thump of one, some good pitches. What Can I Do is a nice one as well. It's like a bass jumping kind of hop and bop local traverse to kind of get some stuff done. This could be a nice one to get errands done and kind of ruminate, smoke a couple on the way as far as those pitches kind of happen. Yeah, I would say What Can I Do is another nice traverse type one to get, just like make it rough, make it smooth. This one's probably a little bit better. Say What Can I Do is probably a little bit better for like traverse as far as those pitches kind of happen. This has a real affable type chorus on here. Some nice background vocals on the chorus as far as those pitches kind of happen. Pretty melodic type one to kind of get. Interesting type pitch, but a real affable type one just overall kind of have, just what I'd say within the tone behind it. So yeah, just what I'd say. So that's the album as far as those pitches kind of happen. So to talk about this I already talked about the two songs I don't recommend. So yeah, this album gets a 10 out of 10 just to say within the pitch behind it. The social score, that's kind of tricky. I think I'm going to give the social score, I'd probably give the social score like a 9.5 out of 10. I look after it, I'm just kind of on the fence in general about what to give this particular album, whether or not it should get a 10 out of 10 or not, or it should get like a 9.5. I feel like the quality is definitely on here. Plenty of good bops, like at least 3 career highlights for Ice Cube on this particular album with Ghetto Bird, You Know How We Do It, and Down for Whatever. I would definitely have to say some blistering type ones for some house party type appeal. Ghetto Bird is a real sheer type one for like that West Coast, this signature kind of poignant West Coast that just feels like something that's going to have as much energy going as California Love or Nothing But a G Thing. It's a real excellent type one. Really dope, is really underappreciated. Bop Gun is like some real psychedelic type trippiness that takes it back to the 70s. Some good gloss about it. Summer Autumn type fare, I kind of feel like within the tone behind it, just really feels like some California sunshine within the sense, but it also has some murkiness about it for like that alternative type fare. So I just look after it. The only real reason why I would say that is just because of the concept in terms of like the massive type of appeal. It does have a song that has over 600 million plays, and You Know How We Do It, but I just look after it. It just kind of feels like the reception of this particular project just may warrant like the concept of folks kind of overlooking it and saying, oh, this one's not as good as some earlier Ice Cube or later Ice Cube, so I just look after it. But that would be the only reason why I wouldn't get a 10 socials, just because of the concept of the reception it got. So it just would be like a 9.5. But other than that, the actual score gets a 10 out of 10. So in terms of the future, like Ice Cube is working on some stuff. I've seen on YouTube that he's going to have some stuff on the way. I'm not sure what's going to specifically happen, but I am excited to see what's going to happen as far as those pitches going to happen. He did drop an album in 2018. Pretty excellent type pitch. I think Everything's Corrupt was the name of that album, and he has plenty more projects to get to. I do want to get to his 1990, 1991 albums, Death Certificate, and the other one. There's some other type pitches kind of get to as far as those fairs kind of happen. I just would have to say I am going to eventually get to Raw Footage and his 2010 album, which I forget what that one's called, but there's plenty of good pitches kind of get to. I do want to get to the Lynch Mob from like their 90s albums, some of those type fairs. There's plenty of good stuff to get to here. But yeah, this is a classic, very underrated, would not pay attention to the reception. So there's plenty of gems on here and plenty of career highlights, and this is just an overall bona fide kind of West Coast. It's just an overall kind of bona fide West Coast gangsta party, I'd have to say.